Hello, and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's episode, I want to talk about what's going on a little bit in social media that's been happening the past few weeks on different websites as far as the BDSM community goes. Fetish.com, Alt, FetLife, of course, the new mysterious website that's out there that people are claiming they're flocking to, and there's a mass exodus going on. First, I want to say, the world's never, unfortunately, is going to be perfect. It's not. We get involved with people, organizations, relationships, careers, even our hobby interests, sometimes with people that don't always align with our own thoughts and values, and that's okay. Civil discourse in the past has always taught us that we can have a conversation, listen to each other's views, and at least hash it out. And if not, we can agree to disagree, and we're happy and move on. As the world has moved forward, these ideologies, these beliefs have changed. Some for the better, I would agree wholeheartedly, and others not so much. What happens though when we get involved with somebody that we really connect with, that we're starting to take our relationship down the next level, down to the next avenue of growth? We're setting all of these new foundations, and we discover that the person that we are seeing, right, doesn't hold the same political views that we do. Now, why am I discussing politics and BDSM? It's a great question, but to be honest with you, it all kind of intermixes, because we've now gotten to the point that we can no longer really, people aren't no longer really separating the two. I can't enjoy somebody's company because, God forbid, they might be a Democrat, or they're a Republican, or they are a Labor Party, or they are a National Party, or they are all the other political affiliations there are in the world. Because unfortunately for you Americans out there who only think that you are the center of the friggin' universe, couldn't be more wrong. So researchers have known for a very long time that when we are married to someone, that when we share a similar outlook on life, similar political views, we're oftentimes more happy, right? And, we're going to agree on stuff. What we didn't seem to understand, or researchers have found, that we choose people in this manner because we want to lead a happy life. If you're Democrats or you're Labor Party or whatever, you want to believe in those fundamentals for your life, what your party supports, your shared values, your shared laws, and that's what you want to live in. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Social factors contribute to all of these things, but sometimes we're involved with people, and politics usually, obviously, because it's such a contentious subject, especially when we get into beliefs, or we started incorporating as well religion or sexuality or gender or cultures and all of these things. Everybody holds a belief. It doesn't matter if your belief is right or wrong, right? Because you cannot tell somebody something is completely 100% infallible, right? Everybody is allowed their opinion. I've even argued this with a lot of people. I will sit and listen to a bigot because I'm trying to understand what the root cause of their hatred is. Sometimes you can be very lucky with them and get them to change, and other times you can't, but you can at least get an understanding of where it stems from. Children, or their childhood, or their family, and so on and so forth. But I'm digressing a little bit. The reality is that people tend to live in areas where their views are dominated in a certain direction, right? I mean, you're going to find more Democrats in California, or maybe certain parts of the UK, as far as the Labor Party goes, than you will when you're looking in, say, Texas. You're going to probably find more Republicans, or In certain parts of Australia, you're going to find more national parties. So national and the Republicans are kind of like similar, and Democrats and Labor are quite similar. But we tend to live in these areas. Now, obviously, younger people who really aren't very much invested, some are invested in the political process, but quite a few have stopped. But the reality is that we tend to believe or will eventually meet, date, possibly fall in love with, might get married too. But if you do, you still hold those tenements. If you live in a city that's primarily full of Labor Party or Democrats or Republicans or national or again, whatever other political parties you have in your country, if you are residing in that city and you plan and you end up spending your life there, if you decide to get involved in a relationship that may or a dynamic that eventually might lead to marriage, it is more than likely you are going to be married to or collaring to the person that holds that same political view, right? It can be hard to tell if politics influenced a choice after two people got together. Because by then there's so many reasons they found that they're compatible already. The same things they like, the same sports teams maybe, or the same similar hobbies like rock climbing and swimming, right? But the only way we really are going to know and understand some of these things is if we observe people, right, before they get together and see if the politics played a role at all. Now, there's been a lot of studies that have taken to this. They've gone to OkCupid, they've injected things, eHarmony for a while. I don't even know if that's still around anymore. Even places like Alt, because Alt was a dating site. I mean, Alt is part of a bigger conglomeration of websites that, that parent company owns like 50 different websites. And they put these little surveys out there. And people filled out these surveys and their own information, including what their political preferences are and what they would want in a partner. Because a place like FetLife or Fetish.com is not really geared for dating per se, people tend to be a little bit more open about this, and they'll say on their profiles, and depending on how important it ranks to them, it'll either, I've tend to seen people who would, it's very important that conservative doesn't talk to them at all, so I can already tell somebody's closed-minded, and I'll quantify that here in a minute. Or they'll say on the top, I don't want to, if you are progressive, neither one of us want to hear from the other. We're right there, and the reason why I say closed-minded, because what you're doing is you are completely and abhorrently classifying an entire group of people, the same types of group of people you claim to be defending. And that doesn't matter what side of the political aisle you are on. If you are a Republican, I'm a moderate conservative myself. So there's stuff on the Republican side I believe, and then there's stuff on the Democratic side that I like. Right? But the reality is, if I'm all for America and I want American values and all this, that, and the other, that means we're including and accepting everybody. Right? I'm not going to get into this. Is not about a political debate. It's not what I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to give you an example. If we are on the Democratic side and, we want to take care and make sure everybody's fair for all and all of these things, that means the other side too. Right? You don't have to go out when a hurricane hits, or like Katrina, when that was so devastating in New Orleans, and the military rushed in. I guarantee you there were Republicans and Democrats that were sitting there, that were in the military or on law enforcement or first responders, and they didn't stop to ask somebody, hey, are you a Democrat? Because if you are, I'm going to leave you drowning there. But we're slowly getting to that stage. And this is, like I said, so I want to kind of wrap this into the whole relationships. We've really now wrapped this into who we are dating. It's become because we believe our side is right. And again, it doesn't matter what side you're on here. We believe it. We don't want to listen. We're not even open to the dialogue. And that's for most political parties. They're not really open to listening. They claim they are, and they claim that they're accepting and inclusive, and that's all poor shit. Because nobody who tells me that they are inclusive, no, that means you want me to do groupthink. And the moment I stop thinking the way you do, I'm out. I've already seen this. And this is widely known right now as cancel culture. Different subject, not going to go into it today. But when we're dating and we've met somebody and my God, there's a really beautiful girl over there. I don't know if she's single, but I'd love to go and talk to me. Maybe she's presenting. Oh, get to know their names. Yeah, so you're a switch. That's great. I'm a dom. And we start talking. I'm not really getting into their political side, but it gets very important for some people, and they'll completely exclude partners because of this whole belief system that they want to hold on to. We have to understand that the world is always going to be subject to change and growth, and sometimes it's going to regress. But then, as the human race, we've progressed forward. We've gone further in the last 100 years than the prior 2,000 before it. Sometimes for better, sometimes we've done things that were terrible. Okay? But the reality is that when we're dating someone, and then this topic, now what do? We're 6 months in. Politics has really never reared its ugly head, right? We're happy. We're going to events together. We are really starting to negotiate. The foundations of trust have been built. We might be talking about the L word might be springing around after 6 months. We might be cruising to the point that we're starting to hint at some signs of some sort of collaring, whether it's protection or attachment, or we're working on the one that's coming in a year, or we're, maybe really starting to consider marriage. And then all of a sudden, somehow, like it always does in somewhere in the world, the political spectrum rolls around. Now, these people have ways inherently, if you want to see people destroy relationships, look at politicians, because they don't really give a shit. They don't care, right? They're just telling you so you go and vote for them so they stay in power. They don't care if they're going to bust up your family. We saw this during the presidency of Trump. I still see it in Trump delusional syndrome when I see people that are still referring to him 3 years after he's not even the president anymore, and you're still talking about him. You need to move on because you're obsessing and compulsing over somebody who's no longer the president, who doesn't make any political decisions. Because you don't agree with him, that's a different story. But he's not making decisions and blaming stuff on somebody who's not there. And this happens to prime ministers and other bureaucracies around the world. We focus and then we blame. But now these cycles come around, and here we are. It's like, oh my God, we've been together and we're in love, and it feels so great. We're in that newlywed stage, and we are out doing demonstrations. We are at the dungeon every weekend, and we're really jiving and clicking with our local community, and we love it. And what happens? Politics. And this is where the divide, this is where all the magic can be broken in a moment's heartbeat. And so how do we navigate this? We have to get back to the time, and people are gonna think this sounds stupid, but the reality is stick to your facts. This is why, okay, so this person you're now with 6 months, 9 months, a year in, oh my God, I'm can't believe abortion's gone. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to vote for the Democrats. And all of a sudden, it comes out and it's like, well, that's not what it's about. And, it's gone to each state. And, oh, you are a bloody Republican. And then here we go. So we got the name slinging starts. And this is usually how it begins. What we've done now is we've picked a side of the conflict between both parties. We've chosen our side. There's nothing else to do. All we are going to do is stick to our guns. We are going to go down. This is the hill we die on. Relationship be damned. I don't give a shit now. If I loved you, if I let you do me in the ass, I don't care if I let you set me on fire, stick needles in me, beat me with a hose within 1 inch of my life, and then looked after me for 5 days while I recovered, and I loved it, and I told the entire world, but you are whatever political party I hate. Screw you. You are the Antichrist. And this is where it begins. And we don't know how to retract from it because we're also being inundated from around the world. And we have our friends or coworkers or family telling us that we shouldn't like these people. It doesn't matter who they are. And if they believe in what you don't believe in, they're crazy, or they are, they're an extremist, or they're terrorists, or they're using all these conjecture words that are only designed to create further division. And if you actually stop and listen to yourself for a moment and ask yourself, I've been with this person for 9 months. Do they look like the Antichrist? Do they look like they're a loony, that just got released 5 days early? So when you get into these discussions, and if you want to minimize the potential damage that you're about to inflict on your relationship, right? I want to give you some tips here. So you really got to understand you can have this conversation. You have to stay calm. It's like any other disagreement. You have to stay and listen to each person's point. Don't get in to doing some of the things we're going to do. So number one thing is stick to facts, right? Don't make stuff up you heard. Don't tell me about your cousin, uncle, aunts, Billy's best friend's girlfriend's third cousin who didn't get an abortion and died, right? That's what we call conjecture. It's what we call hearsay or rumor, right? And in the current environment that we're in, this is so easy to get caught up in. And we already know news sources do this for clickbait, right? They don't report the relevant facts or the real facts. So stick to things you know. Look things up, become well-versed. Stick to the facts, right? Now, second, listen to your partner, right? Don't interrupt them. No matter how much somebody's pissing you off and they're talking about the moon landing was fake, right? And that Bill Clinton didn't really have sex with Monica Lewinsky because the word is, or whatever the hell he said, right? Just listen to what they're saying. Or they like crystals and you think that's new age religious crap and you don't believe into it. You have to let some of these things go, right? So listen for the intention behind what your partner is saying. Listen to how they're bringing solutions to problems that may not even sound that far-fetched to you, right? Maybe they have a different idea of what's going to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit more peaceful, a little bit better. And maybe it's not an idea you've ever had. So what's the harm in listening to it? Right? Instead, you could focus on what they're saying as them attempting to help improve not only the lives of the both of you going forward, but the lives of those around you. Your community, your family, your friends, your neighbors, and maybe someday, if you decide to, your kids, right? Even if everything you do is completely different and not something you're going to always agree on, you're going to have two different ways to change your tire. As long as you can get there and you can do it okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but you got to listen. This one goes without saying. I probably should have said it first, but I didn't. You have to, at all costs, avoid insulting your partner, right? Every therapist on the planet is going to tell you, and that's even the ones that, got C's in grad school that barely passed, right? We're all learn this. But that bait, that temptation you feel when someone's pissing you off, to insult your partner, call them names, call them idiotic or stupid for thinking the way because they've talked about something that you find ridiculous or absurd. If you do that, your relationship's over because you're not coming back from it. Because they're going to just believe this is what they've always thought of you, and you're never going to convince them otherwise. And frankly, you're going to be so caught up in this blind rage, you're saying things. So you got to listen and not insult. Stick to your facts. Stick to what you know. Not conjecture. Not the third cousin of the grocery store owner's girlfriend's illegal alien's married uncle. Right? Listen after that. Don't talk down or ridicule your partner. Right? Here's another big one. These are their personal convictions. These are their beliefs. Right? It's like if they were I don't know, if they were a Southern Baptist and I'm a Catholic. That's what their conviction, that's their personal drive, their belief system. And whether you like it or not, that's a part of who they are. You never were trying to change it before, so why do you want to change it now? Because what? It's going to stir in you that someday that they're going to wake up and have some ceremony to try to induct you into the other political party. They're going to get all their Democratic or national friends to hold you down and do an exorcism on you. Come on now. And we have to understand, like so many other disagreements that and arguments that couples have, right? It doesn't matter who's right. And we get caught up in who's being right. We take score, right? It's all about one-upping each other. Well, in the process of doing that, you're just nuking the relationship, that everything you just built. It's one little thing like this. And politics has been very decisive. I will agree that not everybody cared for Trump, like not everybody cared for Obama or Clinton or every president since then, or I don't know, Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Jacinda Ardern, Angela Merkel. You know, these are just some of the politicians can think that are global. Not everybody's going to side with them, or some are, but they're allowed to side with them, right? If your partner's saying, hey, you know, I'm a political activist, and you're getting involved with them, then you should know whether or not you're going to align with their values. And if not, that's probably not going to be the person you're going to be happy dating. And if you tell me, and often I've had couples tell me, oh, well, you know, but my God, this sex is so great. We click when we get involved in the scene, and it's so passionate. That's great. So you're building an entire relationship on the foundation of physicality. Well, great. That's not going to work. Statistics says it. You've got about a 92% chance to fail. Vegas betting odds, I'm going to take that. I'm going to bet you're going to fail. Because that is too big of an issue for most people to overcome. Right? We have to get to the point that if these are somebody's convictions, that at least allow them to be heard and understood. You don't have to agree. You also don't make sure you don't put them down. But the most important thing I can tell you along this journey, along the way, right, is sometimes we have to just learn to let it go. Because we get inside of these political arguments or these political dogfights, and not only are we name calling and we're not listening to our partners or our friends or our family, and families have been destroyed by this, and we ridicule them over their convictions. Right? We don't let this shit go. And what ends up happening is then we've destroyed all of these things, and we find out we're alone. And then we tell our friends, our friends that we've surrounded with ourselves. So I go to all my commie friends and I go, oh man, you know, for the Russian people, I have, you know, excommunicated my family. Screw them. And then you know what? At some point you're going to get lonely. Birthdays get friggin' lonely. Missing out on family events gets lonely because you got no one to go home to. Family tends to forgive. But, you know, you come out and you're some super duper socialist, communist, Maoist, Marxist person, they're probably not going to want to associate with you. Just like you are going to now stick it in your head, you don't want to associate with them. So one thing when these arguments start flaring up, what I tell people is walk away. I work a lot with couples, and I always tell them to create a word. It's not unlike our safe words in the BDSM community, but a argument stop word, and it's a cool down period, anywhere for 50, depending on how big the argument is, or it's going to be, the longer the period to cool down. So cooler heads can prevail, right? Because we need to be clear in thinking. So we call a timeout. We say, hey, you know what? You want to talk about this? Sure. I'm going to call a 15-minute timeout. That gives us enough time to cool down. Some people, it does make them angrier. And that's a whole different thing that we've got to then work on in therapy. Right? But you have to use the best judgment you've got, and sometimes realize maybe it's best to just shift our views away from politics. We already know our partner's not going to change. They're not going to change us. That's fine. Let's not keep, beating that dead horse. agree to disagree and move forward, right? And finally, you want to consider this. There is a reason we need to keep our perspective on the differences. You two, in your dynamic, who made the commitment to each other for so many reasons that were so far more important in politics. Most likely, you don't find out somebody's political affiliation, their religious affiliation for the most part, right? Or some other privately held beliefs until you are many, many months, possibly years into the relationship. Because you're not there for that. I'm not at the Young Republicans convention hoping I'm going to bump into an independent political party member. That's just stupid. That's like looking for a needle in a haystack and trying to find the haystack. Not going to happen, right? So you have to remember what brought you two together. You in the first place. You found each other because of the love of BDSM. You found each other because you love the community, your shared desire for sadomasochism or rope or needle, whatever you're into. And that's what brought you together. That's what aligned you initially. That's what put you on the same path. And from there, you built a foundation of trust. And as you started to move forward, not only did you exaggerate your foundation of trust, you moved into the physical realm together. You may have now started sharing hobbies with each other, potentially living together, right? All the while, this little ugly thing hasn't reared its head, so it doesn't need to rear its head. You just need to proceed forward and move on, right? And if your biggest disagreement, your biggest contention in your relationship is about politics, then guess what? You're one of the lucky ones, right? You're not fighting about money, or you're not fighting about where you're living or who's making more, right? There's one person I know that I can totally think of that's kind of fits this. They're not in our community. Well, God, I don't know. I mean, maybe they are. He's a really famous Democratic commentator. He's a strategist. He's been on a lot of campaigns, and it goes by the name of James Carville. Southern guy, bald head, glasses. And he's married to a consultant. They are complete political opposites. His wife is a Republican, but they have had such a very strong and successful and long marriage. They've been married together for, oh God, it's going on over 25 years. They've wrote a book together about their life and how they made it work. They talked about their values and what brought them together in the first place and how they focused on that. That they don't get caught up in then just focusing on the politics and letting that become the overall concern for their destruction of their relationship. And that's what I'm trying to say here. Everything we do in our community is going to be impacted by external forces, and some of those forces are even coming from within the community. You're allowed to have your opinions on them. You're allowed to, think what you want and hold your beliefs, but you're not allowed to try to convert somebody, right? Like it's a cult, to what you do, think, and say. Because that's not why somebody was with you in the first place, and I'm sure that's not why you were with them. If you do that, that's a recipe for destruction, and you're going to end up being one of two things. You're going to be a very lonely person if you do this, or you're going to only end up being around people that think that same way, and guess what? I've tended to find that a lot of those people aren't very happy. At least all the research and the data indicates that. So, I know it's kind of a lot to think about. It's not completely fully within the realm of our community, but it is something to consider for this week. I'd like to know, any of you that are out there that are in relationships or in dynamics, has differences of politics ever affected your relationship? Have you ever ended a relationship because of politics? If so, why? And, were you able to find some common ground or not? I know it's a lot to think about, but, maybe we need to go back to a world where we don't talk about politics and religion at the dinner table anymore, because it just, they're a conversation that can no longer be civilized, because we were ready to demonize anyone for their beliefs, whether their beliefs are ours or not. Until next time, everybody, be safe and stay kinky.